Hi, I am on Imagination with the Healing Garden. This is the third video of three on a little thing I'm putting together. The first one covers burnout, how to manage burnout. The second one is the stages of grief and what grief really is. Spoiler alert, it's not actually the stages of grief at all, it's the stages of acceptance. This video is going to be discussing what's wrong with you, which ties into the first two topics, burnout and grief. Basically, nothing is wrong with you. Absolutely nothing. That is a societal gaslight. I love talking about societal gaslights because there are so many, and we are conditioned to be into this little box of approval. And if you don't fit into this ideal box set out by society and conformists, then they label you as there's something wrong with you. And really, there's nothing wrong with you. The problem is when you have this conformist box of being like everybody else and being a cookie cutter and being a lemming, basically, which is what our government wants of us. What ends up happening is you basically start to blame yourself and you get caught in a guilt shame loop because you don't fit in or you're not like everybody else. That's where you get labeled as a black sheep. I am the world's biggest black sheep. And that's okay. I love, 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 love living outside of this box. So we're going to go over what is wrong with you. And there's a lot of different things. A lot of people who basically there's this massive expectation. It's this label on different types of people, different expectations. This is your role in society. This is what you're supposed to be doing. And if you don't fit into that, you're immediately stamped 4F and you're rejected. So there's a lot of us who are basically wandering the world going, I'm 4F. And we are shamed for that. We are ostracized for it. Our family ridicules for us for it. We go to family events, and because we have that 4F on us, our family reminds us that we're 4F because our presence, this is beautiful, our presence reminds them how messed up their system is. That's why. So, really, the concept of what's wrong with me lingers with us for the rest of our lives, where you think, basically, every time you think, what's wrong with me? Or I'm broken. What you're really thinking is, I can't conform to the societal norms that my parents, that my religion, that my culture has set out for me. And as a result, I can't fit in. But you're not supposed to fit in. And this is where I'm going to pull from. I just did a podcast. I have a podcast called Shifting Perspectives, where I basically explore a lot. But on this particular video, it's called Truth. It's basically an exploration into the definition of truth and what exactly everything is happening on the planet and all the societal expectations, and it's what science is doing, what mental health is doing, and how astrology is on this massive rise right now. It's actually really awesome to watch. There's a lot of healing, there's a lot of mental health, a lot of people screaming out. And so this massive demand, compliments of COVID, occurred when so in mental health, this is pretty much what happened. COVID happened, and the government came along and said everyone has to go inside and isolate. Isolation put us in a position where many of us were forced to sit with our problems, which means we had to sit with ourselves, and or we had to be confined in an abusive environment that we escape through going to school or going to work. It brought to surface marital problems. I was one of them. It brought to surface emotional or mental problems. It brought to surface everything that people wanted to avoid. They got rammed down their throats because they were isolated and they couldn't use socialization to escape. They were forced to be contained at home where the majority of their problems are, either with themselves or with their living environment. So the option to avoid suddenly went out the window for an entire year. For some of us, 2 years. Those of us who are high on requiring socialization snapped. I was an introvert This is funny. Until COVID happened, I literally was like a full introvert. It got to be 1 month in, and I went, "Oh my god." I this actually broke my hermitage. I was a full shut-in. I had severe social anxiety until COVID happened. It was because I lost the control to stay inside. It's because I was no longer allowed to choose staying inside. Now it was being forced on me. So I lost the control of me being staying inside. So for somebody who was a shut-in, that didn't sit well with me because it was about control. It was about me choosing to stay inside that bubble. Suddenly it was taken away from me, and I had no choice but to stay inside the bubble, which turned my beautiful little shelter into a mental prison. So suddenly it was, I got to get out. I got to do things. I got to show myself that I can control my situation. So I went to New York City in the middle of COVID. And before you judge me, I have a picture of me having coffee in Times Square. And I was the only one there. Oh, yeah. 9 a.m., Times Square, middle of October, and I had it all to myself. I was more socially isolated than most people. It's a beautiful photograph. One day I will show it to you. It's amazing. I took a picture of my coffee. I did not realize where I was either. I took a picture of my coffee, and one of my friends had like, "Hey, where are you?" And I took a picture and I sent it to them, and I didn't realize it, but in the background is the Times Square ball with a countdown, 2020 October, X amount of days left to the ball being dropped. And I went, "Oh, oh, I'm in Times Square." Hilarious. So that is I knew I was in Times Square, but I didn't realize I was at Times Square, like at the heart of it. The point is, don't judge me because I was isolated. Really, the point is, it's that concept of what's wrong with you is actually a red flag that you are being suppressed, that somebody else is forcing a belief onto you. I keep bringing up beliefs. I really need to do a video just on beliefs. But that's it. We have these definitions that are all patriarchy based, conformist society based. And to be blunt, we are at a time period right now where it's falling apart. That is what's going on. That is the shift. We are all seeing it. We are all feeling it, where there is this massive shift happening. In fact, we're going to really delve into it right now. That's what this video is going to be focusing on, is the shift, the societal shift. And COVID is a huge part of this because COVID was like the tipping point. We had this, it's like a pressure cooker on our society. And then COVID happened and the pressure cooker imploded, each one of us in our own homes. And due to the societal adjustment and our loss of resources due to the society shift, there was a significant funding cut in the psychology field. I watched, several of my friends are psychologists, and I got phone calls going, "Oh my God, the budget cuts just came through and they just fired half of the therapists. Oh my God, budget cuts just came through and they just fired half of the school counselors and they're putting all that workload onto me. Oh my God, the budget cuts just came through." I literally had 4 different phone calls, one from a psychologist who works in a school, one from the psychologist who works in in a psychology office, one who works as an ER in the emergency room, and another who was my own therapist who came through. The same week, all 4 phone calls coming into me saying, "The budget just came through. We're down 50% of the staff." And with COVID, the demand is on the rise. So this is what happened in 2020. It was around March. No, it wasn't March. It was like April, May of 2020. This is what happened. Budget cuts happened immediately. And wow, the demand went up, the budget was cut, and the resources dropped. So the supply and demand of the mental health department, it was a nightmare. In 2020, it hit crucial levels where all these people who were crammed into their homes by force due to the government and the requirements for the socialization or for the isolation from the pandemic. I have roommates. Due to that societal shift, what ended up happening was the demand skyrocketed, and the resources at the time that this demand was up plummeted, which made the demand even higher. So this massive shift immediately did this. It was extraordinary, which is why the internet, desperate for answers, immediately jumped in and set to work with, let's get people mental health. Let's try. This is actually one of the reasons why I launched the Healing Garden, is because I was part of that. I saw it and I went, whoa, there is a huge demand and the resources aren't there. The budgeting isn't there. The facilities aren't there. And the requirements are through the roof and there's not enough. So the need for coaches, the need for mental health answers, just people went, oh my God, I need help. And what ended up happening when that shift happened in our society is it basically dropped this huge spotlight onto mental health, where we all suddenly started to realize, wow, this is a horribly neglected field in the United States. And I'm assuming the world. So as a result, we're basically scrambling now trying to figure out mental health in this massive emergency bleed out of, oh my God, how do we fix this? How do we correct for this? And it's massive and it's all over the place. So what's happening is basically the system prior to COVID, as we know it, is no longer sustainable. People are starting to figure things out. People are starting to heal themselves. People are starting to pursue mental health alternatives because the system is inadequate. The system is designed to enable the system to keep people patients. And it's not working anymore because the system is no longer there. A Wall Street Journal or Washington Post posted an article around that time that said one therapist had over 800 people on their waiting list. Huge, huge demand that wasn't being met. And what that's doing for society is we have these little patriarchy checklists of, is this your box? Is this your box? Is this your box? And everyone's trying to fit into these boxes. And it's just, it's so overwhelming and so bleeding. And people are starting to talk and people have figured it out that it doesn't work anymore. So they're rejecting these conformist labels. And now you've got a lot of people who are outside of the box. Mental health is now aware. We're starting to become aware of how horrible it is. It's no longer a dirty little secret that we can sweep under the rug. It's now everywhere. Everyone has mental illness. Everyone has trauma of some kind. Most of us are undiagnosed. So most of us are wandering around, not even knowing what's wrong with us. That's the problem. So, what's wrong with you? You most likely have a lot of undiagnosed mental health problems because it's been swept under the rug and you've been forced to conform your whole life. And you can't get access to a therapist to sit down and diagnose you. It's a mess. There's just, it's an absolute mess. And this concept, every time you ask the question, what's wrong with me? Use it as a red flag. There's nothing wrong with you. You just do not belong in a box. You don't belong with these little check marks and labels. I'm going to be, there's a lot here. I cannot dig into it in this massive little video. I'm probably going to do a webinar where I break it down of this is mental health. And no, I'm definitely going to do it. This is probably what I'm going to be working on over the next couple days, is breaking down exactly the scope of mental health. It's similar to what I showed you in my grief video, part 2 of the series, where I show you this is the stages of acceptance, the stages of grief, how the stages of grief are actually your cognitive core processing. There's a second part to that that branches off that shows you what happens when your cognitive core does not process something properly. It's not just grief that gets triggered. That's part of it. Also, while you're handling the grief, it triggers the PTSD or it triggers a rewiring of your nervous system. because your processing centers are not being processed properly. So it flips on over. When it flips on over to PTSD or to mental illness, now you've got basically your fear center of your brain kicking on and your fail safes in your system are turning on. And you're not aware of it because you don't know that the cognitive core has a processing to it. You don't even know that you have a cognitive core because we have significant deficit of knowledge in this area. So once you're aware of your cognitive core, how the cognitive core works, then after that, what you end up having is this basically understanding what happens when the cognitive core processing doesn't process properly. Now it switches over to, okay, we're going to rewire your nervous system so you can function in your new environment. A whole nother problem. So I'm going to be starting, this is going to be, this is the third video of this little triangular fun thing that I'm doing of um, what grief really is, managing burnout, and what's wrong with you. We're going to close this out. And then I'm going to put together this webinar to show you what happens in your cognitive core when the processing doesn't occur properly, or if it's so traumatic. We're back to that in that last video I was showing you. You adjust the rudder with your belief and your perspective adjusts accordingly. But if this does not happen, then what ends up happening is your belief shifts, your perspective falls apart, and it ends up rewiring your nervous system. And your perspective is literally taken away from you. And when that occurs, now you get into the realm of mental illness. Now, while all of this is happening, you're also looking at this is subconscious health, by the way. This is the Department of Subconscious Health and what happens with the cognitive core and if it's aligned or not. We are talking about the alignment of your cognitive core. And with the Healing Garden, I step in and I basically teach people this process. And then I show them, okay, this is how to realign your cognitive core. And when you realign your cognitive core and you turn up your intuitive health, your mental illnesses literally diminish. It's extraordinary to watch. I cannot express to you enough how much this awareness literally just, the system corrects itself. The system corrects itself. It's a beautiful, beautiful process. So stay tuned, follow up with me. I'm going to put together that webinar and I'm going to show you the next stage of cognitive core health. And then, and if you haven't yet, I have a podcast, Shifting Perspectives. In one of my videos, Truth is there. Watch that because that's part of it. Once you get Truth and you get these 3 videos and then you see the webinar, the whole thing's going to shift and come together. And when it does, it's like a massive implosion of, I understand what's wrong with me. Nothing's wrong with you. Nothing's wrong with you. You're just out of alignment. That is what's wrong with you. Nothing. You're just out of alignment because you have been forced to conform to somebody else's beliefs, societies, or your mom's, or your dad's, or an abusive teacher. That's it. Nothing's wrong with you. The problem is somebody else is interfering with your system. And the system is designed to not enjoy that. The system is designed to say, hey, something foreign is here. Look at it this way. You have a body, a physical body. And we have physical viruses that contaminate the body. I have one right now. I have, like, my daughter brought home this glorious cough, and not COVID, but she brought home something. So I've been coughing for a few days. My voice is different and I'm tired and I'm just like, just a minute. And it's not COVID. But that's my point. That is exactly my point. It's a virus in my system. Now, I'm not sitting here going, what's wrong with me? I have a virus. I just need rest and sleep, and my body has to do what my body does. Your cognitive core has something equivalent to a cognitive virus. Your cognitive core, oh, I love this analogy. I haven't done this one yet. This is new. So I'm like, yes, this is yummy candy. A belief that does not belong to you, a frequency that does not belong to you, is no different than a cognitive virus. That's it. So what's wrong with you? You have a cognitive virus. That's it. And we basically have to go in, locate the virus. That's limiting beliefs. That's toxic beliefs. That's beliefs that other people force on you. That's societal beliefs that they're forcing you to believe. That's It's a cognitive virus inserted into your cognitive core to hijack your perspective. That is what's wrong with you. Absolutely nothing. You just have a virus. So I'm going to show you how to get rid of it. I'm going to show you what you need to do. And by the way, when I say the Healing Garden has services and this is all we do, this is all we do. We literally teach people how to locate their cognitive virus and remove it so that you drop your mental illness, you increase your ability to function and you're aligned, and you restore your own frequency, you restore your own identity, you align with your purpose, and you're going to feel so much better. It's amazing how absolutely solid this is. It really, we're testing it. And well, to be perfectly blunt, it's looking like it's the cure to mental illness. And we're in the preliminary stages of just remove the cognitive core's virus and the system fixes itself. The question is, and this is the real question, beliefs. How embedded are these beliefs into your system? That's going to be the real work, shadow work. We'll get into that. So stay tuned. We have a lot coming up. I'm really, really excited about this. I'm going to get to work on that webinar. Give me 2 to 3 days because I'm a perfectionist when it comes to my graphics. I really, really hate doing graphics. One day when I have the money, I'm going to hire somebody and say, this is what I want. Just do it and add pinks and purples and make it look pretty. Because I love doing graphics, but unfortunately it's so time consuming and tedious, and I'm a perfectionist when it comes to them. So stay tuned. This is Anna Talks. There's going to be more material coming out with Shifting Perspectives on my podcast. Yeah, Shifting Perspectives. All the links are below. And if you don't want to wait, if you want to get started right now on aligning your system and getting rid of your cognitive viruses, the services are available. Go ahead and take a look at my website, www.annashealinggarden.com, and we'll get you started. Wait, not .com, .org. annashealinggarden.org. Thank you so much, and may the kindest of words always find you. See you soon. I'm gonna go get better. So